Hi there, it's Ian here, and you're watching Grumpy Opinions, the show where I'm going to tell you all about what I think of films, TV shows, games, and life in general. Let's get on with the show. Outlander is a show about Claire and Jamie Fraser of Fraser's Ridge, and their very slightly sci-fi adventures in the new world of 18th century America. Episode 5, Savages, picks up a few weeks or maybe some months down the line from the last episode, as Claire and the nice Cherokee lady are getting on really well, and they've both picked a wee bit of each other's languages, and that's helping them swap recipes and advice. And that's a good thing as well, since Claire needs some local remedies and herbs to help the birth at a local German family's house, and they're a nice bunch, and they tell her that they want to name the baby Clara after Claire. Aye, okay then. Anyway, of course, where she's there, trouble manages to find her because some of the Cherokee dudes decide to stop right outside the house to water their horses, and that gives the guy from Son of Saul a fright, and it looks like it's going to be a big shooting party. But Claire manages to kind of defuse the situation and get in the way and stop it. But then the chief supermodel decides he's going to empty his ashtray in the river, and Herman the German starts to flip out again. But, at least that's everything for the moment. And then Jamie, on the other hand, he's gone off into town to try and drum up some tenants to work the land, and he also needs to find a silversmith. But the only thing he can find is the smith's horny wife, and a lot of people telling him thanks, but no thanks. So after a bit of pint and a chat, he finds out that it's because the farmers have all given up farming as a result of being overtaxed by dodgy taxmen who are stealing. And while Jamie goes off to check on the smithy's hot wife again, wee Ian goes to get a bridle fixed, and he ends up paying way over the odds because the grumpy old blacksmith turns out to be Murtaugh, and he's a bit older and a lot greyer, but he's still just as much of a grumpy curmudgeon. And he ends up driving a really crazy hard bargain, and Jamie gets really annoyed and goes back in, storming out, ready to lay the smack down. And of course, as soon as they see each other, it's a big bromance reunion, and they end up catching up over a couple of drinks. And Mertz tells them that there's a secret meeting on that night, so instead of going back, they hang about. And Claire, on the other hand, she's doing a bunch of work, and she bumps into a local priest of sorts, who tells her that the wee babby and the yummy mummy only went and died of the measles, and Grandpa German blames her and the Indians and a curse and all sorts. So watch out, because he's going crazy. So Claire starts to get all prepped for trouble, and when eventually the guy does turn up, he's not angry with her. He's kind of broken, and it's quite sad really, because you realise he's lost so much and he's so upset, and you start to really feel sorry for him. And he ends up giving her a wee bag and package that looks like something off their witch project, and it turns out it's got a scalp in it and the necklace that the old Cherokee lady had on, and he's only gone and murdered her. So Claire asks him to leave, and then she burns the package with as much reverence as you can for something like that. And then Herman goes back to his house, which is being totally massacred and burned by vengeful natives, and him and his wife both end up getting dead. And then while that happens, Jamie finds out that Murtaugh is actually some kind of rabble-rouser for the regulators, and he's clearly an important man, but it puts him in an awkward position because he can't really join them because he's given his word to the governor, but then he isn't going to stop them either. So he goes home, and he finds his distraught but somehow really hot-looking Claire, and luckily she gets a bit cheered up when Murtaugh turns up whistling their old show tune and doing a bit of a dance. So who knows, maybe happier days are afoot for them. And meanwhile, back in the not quite present day of 1970 odd, Roger's gone up to Inversnecky with his best train spotting hat and bag, and he's asking around, and he finds out that Bree was there, but she's gone already a few days ago and left him a letter, and she left instructions that it wasn't to be sent to him until after a year had passed, but the wee lady in the hotel gives it to him anyway since she thinks that he's been dumped and is upset. And it turns out, of course, she's gone through the stones, just as we thought. Just because she learned some bad news about Jamie and Claire, which is probably the same news that he learned last week, and just like that, she went off into the past. So what did I think? Well, this week we're right back into proper old school Outlander territory. Jamie's doing business stuff and going around chatting to people, and Claire's been in full on doctor mode and getting involved with things and people. And it really felt like this week we were on a more familiar but still new and interesting footing, although I was a little bit split on a few things, but generally I really enjoyed this week. I mean, I think it was also really great that there was a sense of a larger story going on around the characters, the German family. Because at the beginning, when Claire mentioned pregnant Petronella at the start, for a moment I was is that Parsley's middle name or something? But no, it's a totally different person that Claire knows. And the vicar guy who popped up later, I mean, there's a community of settlers that they presumably know and they trade with and they get on with and hang out with sometimes. And it's good because, I mean, we're a bit further down the line. And this is just showing that there's a whole world existing there that, we don't necessarily need to have seen it. And a lot of it could have been in the book, but maybe not, but it doesn't matter because it just gives us that sense that there is a whole world of stuff going on. And similarly, like, the wee run joke about Jamie getting hit on by the Smithy's one wife because she's, clearly bored and he's big and handsome. So, like, that could be a setup for something later on. But then again, it might just be a funny little joke in this episode. I mean, a bit more on that later, maybe. But it was interesting to see that Jamie's plans, like, to be some kind of Farmlander general didn't quite pan out. And he's actually had to do a bit of work on things. I mean, I like that concept. It doesn't make everything quite as easy as it needs to be. I also really loved seeing Claire just doing farm work. I mean, that there was something really nice about that, and you got to see that she'd learned to knit. Because she was talking to Bean a couple of episodes ago about that. I mean, it feels real. I mean, I like this, as I said, we like with the community, this sense of this being a real world, not just a TV show. Like, they're farmers. So if Jamie's away, someone needs to tend to the animals and do the stuff and like knit gloves. And at the end of the day, like sit down and actually neck half a pint of whiskey or rum or whatever that was. Because yikes! I mean, Claire's always been able to put it away, but for a doctor, I mean, you think she'd like her liver a wee bit more than she does now. But in any case, drinking seems to suit her. I mean, certainly the way she looked in like a nightie and arm warmers straight out of bed. I mean, she looked better than most people do after dolling themselves up to go out. Anyway, I also liked that in this plot, like nobody seemed to be wholly good or bad, like especially during like the Germans versus Indians thing. Now, I mean, I suppose a surface reading thing of that might be that people will be saying that the Germans are all in the wrong because nasty bad Germany because Second World War, but also because like people feel like quite guilt over like the things that were done to the Native Americans. But the fact is, like the Cherokee guys were kind of being a little bit belligerent. I mean, they were being dicks basically. I mean, if you're going to go and get water from somewhere, maybe don't do it right outside the German's house, like literally right outside the front window. I mean, bold as brass, like doing just wandering up and standing there. And considering like how cross like the natives get when like Jamie was getting anywhere near them, and when he wandered into the camp, they looked like they were about to kill him. But you think that they would have enough common sense to like water their horses maybe out of sight or round the corner from that house. I mean, but also with the Germans, you've got a granddad and he's scared for his whole family. His wife, his son and daughter are there and a wee grandkid, and then a whole load of scary looking Indian braves literally like rock up outside his front door, and they've all got like bows and arrows and guns and stuff. Now, sure, it might technically have been their land before they moved there, but I mean, he's clearly been there a while. They've built a cabin there, and they've obviously lived there for like a couple of months or maybe even like a year or two. So you can kind of sympathize a little bit with his situation. And like not everyone's going to be like Jamie and Claire levels of modern progressive towards the Native Americans. But also, it kind of made me chuckle that like, the natives didn't actually recognize Claire. I mean, why would they? I mean, they've met her once or twice and, maybe like all white people look the same to them. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that was the intention, but the fact that she actually had to remind them who she was made sense to me. And it was only when she actually said, I'm like the bear killer's wife. They were like, oh yeah, yeah, we remember you now. It was also great to see Murtaugh again. I mean, I could be wrong, but it felt like to me that like Duncan Lacroix's accent is actually finally settled because it didn't offend my ears as much as it has in some of the previous seasons. I mean, or maybe I'm just getting old as well, but it didn't surprise me to see that he's come into his own in the new world and he's found work and is something of a leader, although it's a little bit convenient, and that was one of my problems. I mean, like I said earlier, there are a few aspects of this that I didn't feel entirely happy with, that was a wee bit split on. And one of them is the good old fashioned Outlander convenience plotting, which I've talked about many times on loads of episodes. And some of the stuff was very TV writing, if you know what I mean. Like, put it this way, Jamie and Ian go to town and it all goes a bit pear shaped because, they can't actually, get anyone to buy a tenancy. But then someone mentions to Jamie that there's going to be a secret meeting.
There's a meeting soon, if you're interested.
And then he walks away. I mean, he literally says there's going to be a secret meeting, and he just walks away. I mean, presumably that's like so the audience gets advance warning. I mean, that's the writing 101 type things because it's going to be important later. But it's also important that Murtaugh for him to tell them about that and him to drag them along to it, and then you find out he's the leader. But that's awfully righty, if you know what I mean. Like on a show, it's a bit like on a TV show when somebody's like going to tell someone something like, why did you do this thing? Let me tell you, when they're standing in a building. And then it cuts to like the same folk in a car and he's like, well, the reason was, and you're sitting there thinking, what, did you just not have the conversation the whole way to the car and getting in the car, putting your seatbelts on, starting the car, going around the corner, or you're now on the highway? I mean, it's a convention and a conceit of like TV and filmmaking, but it's awfully, awfully clunky. Like if in real life, if you were like sitting in the bar talking to someone and they're like, oh, well, this, that, and this, that, but there's going to be a secret meeting, and they turned around and walked out the bar, you'd be like, what are you doing, you weird bastard? Like, stop trying to be mysterious and just tell me what's going on or something, or who to speak to or something. Weirdo. But no, also in the same scene, Like, I've got to be honest, some of the wig game seemed a wee bit iffy. Like, no offense to the actor. I mean, his acting seemed to be fine and everything like that. But what was going on with his hair? I mean, it looks mental and totally took me out of the scene completely because it looks like it's on squint or something. Also, further to like the quinky dinks, as we call them, I mean, they're not only out of luck, Jamie and Ian, and they can't get the tenant, and they can't find a silversmith, but then they go out and find out not only is Murtaugh there, not only is he a blacksmith, but he's also a silversmith, and he's also the big dude in the band of regulators who the same people who wouldn't sign up as tenants. I mean, it's all awfully convenient. Also, on a side note, silversmithing's not easy. I mean, I've read up about stuff like that a few years ago, and it's not like goldsmithing or blacksmithing, which is basically just like ding, 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 hammering metal together and stuff until it's right. I mean, it's a lot more complicated than that, I'm sure, but you know, there's a real craftsmanship to like silversmithing that I don't know. It just feels like it wouldn't be something that a blacksmith would probably know that well because you've got to do all kinds of crazy stuff because it reacts really weirdly under heat and pressure. And if you don't do it right, and you've got to stop and reheat it and then leave it and then do other stuff, and then you can only do a bit. And if you don't, then the whole thing kind of just goes wrong, and it's almost like it sort of implodes on itself. But I just don't see like Murtaugh specialising in that. I mean, just because I don't remember there ever being an aptitude in that they mentioned previously. I mean, not in any part of the series before that. So, I mean, maybe he might be okay at it. I mean, he might be amazing at it, but I just hope Jamie ends up with something half decent, not just like a piece of rubbish. And that whole bit just kind of gave me pause. I mean, also, we're also doing the whole Outlander thing of killing off characters that only got introduced this week or the last week or something like that. I mean, they only had Tantu Cardinal for a few days or something, maybe. I mean, I understand she's kind of a big deal in Canada. I mean, she's probably one of the better known Canadian First Nation native actors. But to suddenly write her off like that felt a little bit offhand. I mean, what's more, it probably had a lot less impact than I felt it should. Like, because at first I thought, oh no, Herman the German must have like killed his wife, or maybe that's his daughter's skull, because he's gone completely mad. But then I was thinking, well, how did he manage to like find her and like by fluke and he wrapped it in the cloth from the toy shop? Is that just an accident? I mean, it was obviously so that you got that whole moment when you think it's going to be the toy, but then actually it turns out it's the scalp and it's all a bit Blair Witch. But yeah, that seemed a little bit too TV-ish again for me. And finally, like the community theatre acting only popped up again once this week. I was glad of that, but my God! And it was Sophie Skelton being Bree, and it was just that one scene at the end. And honestly, maybe she clearly wanted to make that scene a bit special, but all that happened is she ends up looking a bit special because she's overacting so much with these ridiculous pantomime looks back and forward. But anyway, maybe next time, calm it down a wee bit, love. Still, like I said, it was a pretty good solid episode, and a story that now feels like it's actually progressing. I mean, at least for Jamie and Ian. I mean, Claire's ongoing story, I presume, might be more interesting. There might be more measles stuff coming up. But I mean, considering the German family and the old native lady and all that, the plots are literally dead, then we'll have to see what happens. So till next time, I've been Ian, and these have been my grumpy opinions.